Okay, the next item of business is a statement by Ivan McKee on a public services reform strategy for Scotland. The Minister will take questions at the end of his statement. Therefore, there should be no interventions or interruptions. And I call on Ivan McKee, Minister, around 10 minutes, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Today I'm delighted to publish our public service reform strategy, rooted in realism, driven by urgency and focused on delivering for Scotland. Public services are an asset and an investment in our collective future. Everyone in Scotland should have access to services that are efficient, good quality and effective. Public services reflect the society we are and who we aspire to be: enterprising, compassionate and forward-looking. Well-functioning public services are the antidote to those who would seek to divide our communities. People in Scotland want a fairer future where every individual and every community has the opportunity to thrive. The strategy I am launching today is about delivering that future. It aims to unlock the full potential of Scotland's public services, making them more efficient, more joined up and more preventative in approach. This is about doing things better, not delivering less. It's about Scotland leading our own agenda for reform, not following that of others. Presiding Officer, public services matter deeply. They are the foundation of a fairer Scotland and essential to our priorities: eradicating child poverty, growing a wellbeing economy and addressing the climate crisis. But our system is under strain. Demographic shifts and rising demand are intensifying fiscal pressures. The fiscal context remains challenging. The UK Government spending review has shortchanged Scotland by over £1 billion. Energy costs for public services are among the highest in Europe, and every public body in Scotland is now impacted by increased employer national insurance contributions. A change of UK Government has changed little. Next week, the Cabinet Secretary for Finance and Local Government will publish the medium-term financial strategy and fiscal sustainability delivery plan, setting out the scale of the fiscal challenge we face and how we will address this. Public service reform is an integral part of this Government's response to that challenge, about how we optimise every pound of spend to deliver the services that the people of Scotland need and deserve. This strategy builds on the work of the Christie Commission, which called for public services that focus on prevention, place, partnership, people and performance. Presiding Officer, this Scottish Government has already delivered some successful reforms. Since 2008, smarter justice interventions have helped deliver a 92% reduction in the number of young people being prosecuted in adult courts. The Scottish Child Payment alone is estimated to keep 40,000 children out of relative poverty this year. Between 2003 and 2020, our Child Smile programme has halved tooth decay amongst children and generated significant cost savings for NHS health boards. Our annual £1 billion investment, providing 1,140 funded hours of early learning and childcare, has encouraged nearly three-quarters of parents to say it's helped them find or look for work. And the reorganisation of policing into a single body saves £200 million in back-office costs every year. But we also very clearly recognise that we have not delivered the Christie approach to its fullest potential. As a government, we have listened to communities, to those who deliver services and to the people who rely on them. Despite increased investment, public satisfaction with services has fallen. We know services can be hard to navigate for those who rely on them most, and frontline staff can feel constrained in their ability to help. That must change. We must rapidly increase the scale and pace of reform, building on the strong foundations we have in Scotland, our shared vision and shared values. We need to intervene earlier to prevent expensive crisis interventions later. This strategy sets out a bold, system-wide approach to changing how we think and how we behave across the public service system. It maximises impact across the whole system, not just in individual organisations. This whole system approach will enable reform across all public services, including the changes set out in the Population Health Framework and Service Renewal Framework presented to Parliament 2 days ago. We have taken the time to understand the barriers to systemic change: duplication, fragmentation, siloed working, outdated accountability structures, which too often make doing the right thing harder. And we have identified the actions required to remove those barriers. This strategy marshals together in one place everything we need to do to reform our public services. It recognises that reform is a process, not an event, and that progress requires a range of interventions, all of which are necessary. Culture is the public sector's biggest strength, but can also be a barrier to reform. Leadership is key. We must allow leaders to lead and to take risks to improve outcomes and to hold them to account to do so. Empowerment is vital of staff, of service users, of communities, involving them in design and delivery of services to make those services work better. Prevention, investing earlier to avoid harm later, is easy to grasp but can be hard to deliver. Presiding Officer, today I'm also publishing research which shows Scottish public services have successfully introduced innovative and highly effective preventative interventions across a range of policy areas over a number of years. This research will inform our understanding of the technical and cultural barriers to building a preventative system, how we enable the movement of money around the system to support investment in prevention, and how we tackle the root causes of poor outcomes and improve lives. Joining up services, changing how we do things to better integrate services locally is key. We need to further develop local partnerships, empower staff and communities, remove duplication and end the cycle of people being passed from pillar to post to get help. We will simplify the policy landscape, strengthen community planning partnerships, unlock the potential of the third sector, tackle barriers to data sharing and maximise the use of digital technologies to make services fit for the future. This is exemplified in the whole family support approach. The Scottish Government is working with local partners to enable greater local decision-making and flexibility to support those families at risk of poverty. It means local partners can use resources in the way they find most effective to support people. And efficiency, ensuring every pound of public money works as hard as it possibly can, is no less than people and businesses have a right to expect. Across key efficiency programmes, we've already secured significant cash avoiding and releasing savings, expected to reach up to £280 million over the 2-year period to the end of 24-25. But there is much more we can do. Presiding Officer, through the tools at our disposal and the efficiency work streams in our strategy, will reduce identified costs on Scottish Government and public body spend on corporate functions by 20% over the next 5 years, and that equates to an approximate annualised £1 billion cost reduction by 29-30. This will require every part of the public sector to reduce the cost of doing business to prioritise the front line. All public bodies are already required to deliver best value, but this is about going further and faster. It's about taking all available opportunities to introduce and embed efficiency through automation, digitisation, estate rationalisation and changing the delivery landscape. This is about delivering significant change, including structural reform in government and for public bodies where that is needed. Not in a headline-grabbing way that simply throws out random targets based on no evidence, but by identifying and delivering the real opportunities for better joined-up services that will improve lives and redirect resources. We must also be ready to reshape our workforce to enable that service reform. Everyone recognises that things must change, and that creates challenges as well as opportunities for employees. So we will work with partners, staff and trade unions to ensure we have the right number of people in the right roles to deliver real and meaningful change, and that staff, very importantly, are empowered to make services better. Presiding Officer, the Scottish Government cannot deliver reform alone. We are part of a system with huge potential which already shares our vision and values. I've also set out in the strategy how we will change our approach to partnership, because the full potential of reform can only be delivered in partnership with public bodies, with trade unions and the third sector. Collaboration must be at the heart of our system. The very House Agreement, our collaboration with local government, is central to this effort. Employees are also key partners. We will not deliver change without you. And my message to our staff delivering public services is this: you are at the heart of this change. You are the system's greatest asset, and this strategy is about trusting and empowering you to work across boundaries, to focus on what matters and to shape services with the people you serve. Presiding Officer, this strategy is at its heart a programme of action. It will be backed by governance, performance monitoring and a clear commitment to transparency. Our Public Service Reform Board will drive and oversee this work, as members from public bodies, the third sector, local government and business people with experience of delivering transformation programmes. But it's also a statement of belief that Scotland can lead, that Scotland can change, and that together we can build services which are modern, accessible, flexible, responsive and seamless, and which are fit for Scotland's future. We must be bold and brave to deliver real, long-lasting and meaningful change. This strategy demonstrates that the Scottish Government is ready to go further and faster than we ever have to reform our public services. I invite Parliament to support this shared endeavour to work with us and partners so that the people of Scotland can get the services they need and deserve. Thank you, Presiding Officer.
Thank you, Minister. The Minister will now take questions on the issues raised in his statement. I intend to allow around about 20 minutes, after which we'll need to move on to the next item of business. And I would invite members wishing to ask a question who haven't already done so to press the request to speak buttons. I call first Craig Hoy.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. And can I apologise for my late arrival and missing the beginning of the Minister's statement. This 49-page, 14,851 word wish list of word soup on the future of the public services does not mention the word waste once, but it does say that the SNP government has an ability to deliver real change within public services. Now, I agree with that. They have delivered real change for the worse in Scotland's public services. And despite this government telling us, the Scottish Conservatives, that it would be reckless to advocate for tax reductions of £500 million, today Ivan McKee says he can save £1 billion by simply cutting corporate functions by 20% over the next 5 years. The document says this is neither an attempt to, quotes, grab headlines nor, quotes, throw out targets. But we have been here, Minister, many times before with the SNP. So I ask the Government this. What is the breakdown on those £1 billion in savings? How will they be made, in which departments, in which agencies, and in which specific corporate functions? And if it is now so achievable, why has the SNP Government not done this beforehand? And the strategy only makes passing reference to the workforce and the issue of severance. So what size in full-time equivalent terms will the bloated civil service be by the end of this decade and on to 2035? And this strategy doesn't mention a single body, agency or quangle that is to be cut. Are there any, other than those that were announced in the Health Service yesterday, or is this yet again another work of fiction? And isn't it time that this Government stopped talking and started swinging the axe?
Minister.
Okay, thank Craig Hoy for the question, I think. Not unexpected. I think it's important to understand that if you're serious about making real change, and I've delivered transformation programmes in the private sector and elsewhere, you need to understand the drivers that are causing the barriers that prevent you doing that. And just going in and swinging a big axe isn't going to deliver service. We've seen that across the Atlantic, where Elon Musk, who is no longer with the Trump administration precisely because he went in with a big axe, started cutting stuff, and it immediately backfired because he didn't know what he was doing. This is about understanding in a very serious way what those barriers are, about leadership, about accountability, about incentives, about culture. It's about taking forward efficiency programmes we've already delivered on that have saved, as I said in the statement, £280 million already. It's about building on that work in procurement, on estates, on automation, which we've done some fabulous work on intelligent automation already in government across the public sector, and taking those to the next level, building on the foundations we have. And in terms of public bodies, yeah, it's right, we've already announced this week one merger of public bodies. More of that will in due course happen. But the first step isn't to go in and restructure, attractive though it might sound. The first step is to go in and understand where the duplication is, and then remove that and get those bodies working together, and then see what the opportunities beyond that are. That's where you get the biggest value, rather than just grabbing some headlines around about this. In terms of the civil service, it's worth identifying that civil service costs actually went down in real terms last year. The headcount is also going down, and that will continue as part of this work. That £1 billion target is 20% of those corporate costs we identified in the study we did last year. We're putting in place budget processes to monitor and control that. That will equate to approximate 4% reduction in each of the next 5 years. More detail on that will be given by the Cabinet Secretary in the medium-term the medium-term financial statement and the fiscal sustainability delivery plan that will be unveiled next week. And I know that Craig Hoy will wait with interest to see the further details we're going to provide on that next week.
Daniel Johnson.
Can I too apologise to both yourself and the Chamber for my late arrival, and thank the Minister more emphatically than usual for advance sight of his statement. The one thing you couldn't accuse the Government of is rushing into this. It's only been 14 years since the Christie Commission published its results, and there is a fear I have that, while I welcome the overall sentiment, that this is just a plan for a plan and a creation of another board. So the Minister, in his response there, said that you need to have an analysis of key levers. So can he specify what they are? Secondly, reform, to my mind, is not about shrinking the state, but maximising its effectiveness. And you cannot ignore the fact that over the last decade, the civil service has grown at 3 times the rate of the NHS, while police, fire and colleges' headcounts have all fallen. What will address that and make sure that we focus investment on the front line? And finally, he again mentioned root cause. So this is an acknowledgement that we have £1 billion worth of waste. How did that happen, and what will prevent it in the future?
Minister.
Yeah, OK. So, thanks for the question. I know Daniel Johnston is earnest in his efforts to support reform and make sure that we do the right things for the interests of everybody in Scotland. In terms of the levers, I think that's laid out quite clearly in the statement. We've done the root cause analysis, and we've attempted to put that in an accessible format in the document itself to understand why it is that leaders optimise in their silos and don't optimise collaboratively across the system, how we hold public bodies to account and again incentivise them to work within their silos and not integrate across the system, how it is that budget processes again incentivise organisations and portfolios to optimise within their silos and not invest across the system, but also, very importantly, invest in preventative measures. How it is that the policy landscape has become too complicated and requires to be simplified, and how we will look at structures to enable that to happen. So I think those levers are clearly set out, but we're always open for discussion on anything else that Daniel Johnston comes up that thinks needs addressed as part of this activity. In terms of shrinking, he's absolutely right. We talk about this £1 billion. It isn't £1 billion saving for the sake of it. It's £1 billion that we can then invest in those frontline services. And as I said, there'll be more information on the detail of that from my colleague, the Cabinet Secretary for Finance, next week. And in terms of waste, I think he would accept, from his business background, that this is absolutely a journey. We've delivered some significant savings that I've identified in my statement and in the strategy document itself. Police organisation, for example, continues to save us £200 million a year, and there are many other examples within there, within the document. And as I've identified in the last 2 years, we've saved another £280 million through the programmes we've taken forward. To unlock that £1 billion, yes, we need to accelerate what we're doing in automation. Yes, we need process redesign. Yes, we need simplification. Yes, we need removal of duplication. That stuff doesn't happen overnight, but we are working through that as quickly as we can so that we deliver real lasting change that continues to make services better, not just by swinging the axe and cutting them, make them worse in the short term.
Kenneth Gibson, to be followed by Liz Smith.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The Minister said that a vital change will be to streamline and enhance frontline service provision by reducing the level of duplication, sharing where possible. And I do very much welcome the statement. The public sector landscape is cluttered. Local authorities, health boards, city and regional deals, community planning partnerships, integrated joint boards, non-departmental public bodies. Can I therefore speak to Scottish Government plans to declutter and to potentially merge public sector bodies?
Minister.
Well, one of the work streams in the strategy is precisely on that. It's to look at the public sector landscape and also look at government directorates in the round and understand where there is duplication in order for us to take forward that work. But as I say, the way you do that is by understanding at a fairly deep level what is happening, do the process mapping, understanding the value stream mechanisms within that, understanding how it interfaces with service users, and that is where you identify the opportunities for the removal of duplication and for the automation of back office services and further implementation of the shared service platforms that we're already rolling out to public bodies. So our first step is to work with public bodies in clusters within and across portfolios for them to share information, to share data, to share process mapping and to understand where they are, where there is duplication, so that the experts in the public bodies are leading this work, and public body leaders have been very clear and empowered to do that, to come forward with their proposals, both within public bodies and within government, as to how we make the whole system more efficient and effective. Yes, there will be, as we move forward, I've no doubt, more proposals coming forward for removal of public bodies, but I say the first step is to make what we've got work more effective, and anyone who's run a transformation programme knows that's what you do. You do that first, and then that highlights the opportunities where you can simplify the whole landscape as and when you see where that's required.
I think we're going to need slightly briefer responses. I think Liz Smith, to be followed by Claire Hawkey.
Thank you. Minister, this is the sixth debate and statement that I've sat through when it comes to questions about public sector reform, and that's because the Finance Committee for a very long time has been calling out for real action. So can I ask the Minister, what is the one structural change that will come out of this statement that is going to make the real difference on public sector reform?
Minister.
Well, there's many in there. There's 18 different work streams, but if I was to reflect on this, I think probably the two things that are the most important is we need to get public bodies leaders focused on being collaborative. And you read the statement, that's about how we recruit public body leaders, it's about how we hold them accountable, it's about how we change that culture so that they are focused on making the whole system work and not just making their individual parts of it function and sub-optimising in that regard. And I say the second one is about how we enable budgeting processes that allow the shift to resources to preventative budget, and that's something that's really stymied the efforts we've tried to take forward, where everybody is measured and incentivised to maximise their budgets for their part of the silo in the here and now, and that we lose the perspective to a large extent on how we ensure that preventative spending, which, if you look at the numbers we've put out today, and we've been clear in the statement, the biggest numbers that come from a saving is making sure we get prevention right. There's some good examples of that, but an awful lot more we can do that. But the thing that blocks that is largely about how we structure preventative budgeting within the public sector.
Claire Hawkey, to be followed by Mark Griffin.
Modernisation and increased efficiency must be at the heart of our efforts to reform public services, and we must take advantage of the advances in digital technology and AI to do this. Can the Minister outline what steps the Scottish Government is taking to harness the potential of technology to future-proof our services?
Minister.
Yeah, a very important part of this. I think that digital underpins a lot of the work we're doing. I think it's the most important thing. I think culture and leadership and the way money flows is the most important thing, but digital is absolutely key to this. I'll talk about our Centre of Intelligent Automation within government that's providing services across the whole public sector. It saved upwards of £10 million already in its initial period, implemented dozens of projects already, but got several hundred more projects in the hopper, so we're investing more in that service to enable that to happen. Provision of digital services for service users is hugely important, and the digital strategy will be coming out soon in collaboration with COSLA will identify where we're taking that forward. How we make sure we use digital resource across the piece is very important as well, making sure we don't duplicate digital skills in different parts of the public sector. There's visibility of those digital skills, reuse of components and code so that we accelerate the deployment of digital solutions is a very critical part of this as well.
Mark Griffin, to be followed by Michelle Thompson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The local government workforce has reduced by 30,000 full-time equivalent posts, while central government payroll is up 73% during the government's time in office. I just wanted to ask the Minister if he feels the balance between staffing levels between national and local government is appropriate, and if that lends itself to his ambition to having the right number of staff in the right number of places.
Minister.
No, I think this is a journey and we need to make more progress there and we need to do it faster. If you look at the data, you'll see that the civil servants workforce in total, including contractors, has been coming down for the last 3 years in a row now. That process will continue. You'll see that the total operating cost of Scottish Government has come down last year. That process, in real terms, that process will continue. I wouldn't characterise it as between local and central government. I characterise it as between corporate functions and the front line. And those person-to-person frontline workers that are engaging with service users are, of course, the most important. And this is about shifting that £1 billion of resources from those corporate functions to that front line. That's work I think that we need to accelerate and working with partners to make that happen in a way that doesn't cause the system to have problems while we're doing it, but we want to go as fast as we can using the tools I've outlined in the strategy.
Michelle Thompson, to be followed by Ross Greer.
Firstly, Presiding Officer, can I apologise for being a little late? Can the Minister help other political parties understand whose ultimate accountability for headcount in the civil service? A recent Finance and Public Administration Committee, the outgoing Permanent Secretary, JP Marks, stated his role to include, and I quote, being steward of headcount. To this end, will the Minister confirm that his good efforts towards reform, including having the right number of people in role, will be fully supported by the new Permanent Secretary?
Michelle Thompson is absolutely right. Ministers have got responsibility for setting budgets and setting policy, but operational aspects are controlled by those who lead those organisations, and impartiality of the civil service means that ministers do not have a veto or control over how many are hired, what grades they're at and what they're working on. That is left to the civil service due to the impartial nature of that organisation, and that's very clear on the civil service, the Scottish Government website. The civil service isn't in that sense accountable operationally to ministers or indeed to Parliament. But I am have confidence that the new Permanent Secretary is in a very effective place with regards to the measures we are taking forward here. That's witnessed by the reduction in headcount we've seen across the total civil service workforce, and indeed I've already mentioned the reduction in real terms, possibly for the first time, certainly in a very long time, of the total operating costs of the Scottish Government. The Scottish Government sticking to its budget, which in terms of the civil service, which it hasn't always done in the past, is important, and I know that the new Permanent Secretary is committed to making that work in partnership to deliver on this strategy.
Ross Greer, to be followed by Alex Cole-Hamilton.
Thank you. When the Scottish Greens were in government, we secured a pilot of the 4-day working week. South of Scotland Enterprise confirmed to Parliament's Finance Committee that this has resulted in significant reductions in staff absences. That is good for productivity in the public sector. So I was a bit surprised to see no mention of the 4-day or reduced working week or better work-life balance for public sector workers in this reform strategy document. So could I ask the Minister to confirm if the Government recognises that the 4-day working week and a better work-life balance for public sector workers is a powerful tool in our quest for a more productive and effective public sector?
Minister.
I think the word balance is important. I think that the pilots we have taken forward in South of Scotland Enterprise and Accountants in Bankruptcy, and I've met with the chief executives of both those organisations recently to get feedback on those pilots, have been very well received. I've also met with trade union colleagues to discuss how we move this forward. I know that they are very keen on this. I think there absolutely is a place for it, but it's really important to understand where it's going to be effective and the mechanisms by which it delivers. So we are reviewing that at the moment to see where this works most effectively, but we don't lose sight of the big picture, which is how we make services more joined up, more integrated, more efficient, more focused on prevention and more focused on empowerment, so that we deliver improved services for the people of Scotland. So I say there may well be a role for that, for the reasons that the member highlights in certain parts of the public sector, and that's something we are obviously reviewing as part of a follow-up to the pilot that was undertaken.
Alex Cole-Hamilton, to be followed by Karen Adam.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Presiding Officer, yesterday my colleague Willie Rennie told the Chamber that public service reform should be boring, and so far the statement is doing a good job of keeping the promise of that directive. But the real path to reform must embrace the transformative technologies now at our fingertips. Our universities are packed with research projects on AI, but a risk aversion in the National Health Service and a lack of dedicated funding means that projects like these are not making it to the front line, where they could bring down weights and improve patient outcomes. So can I ask the Minister, how does the Government plan to roll out the use of AI and other emerging technologies, where appropriate, to deliver faster, smarter public services?
Minister. Yeah, and I think that's the biggest compliment I've had today, and I can reflect back to Mr Rennie that I've done my very level best to make this statement this afternoon as boring as possible. Because there's an important point there, which is that this is about getting the detail right, getting the fundamentals right. It's not about the flashy headlines, because this detailed work is what delivers for the people of Scotland. In terms of this question regarding digitisation, I refer back to an earlier answer I gave, there's quite a bit of work happening here already. We have CivTech, which is a world leader in GovTech solutions, as the vehicle for bringing in private sector initiatives in to solve public sector problems. That's copied by governments all over the world now. The work that's mentioned in the strategy around about further digitisation, both within service delivery to make those back office functions more effective, and in terms of user interface, is already proceeding, and there's more to be done on that, and the new digital strategy will identify that. Word of caution, I think we also need to be careful in terms of how we share data, which is something we very much want to do, but we need to make sure the right safeguards are in place, and in terms of how we use AI, building on the intelligent automation work we've already done to make sure the appropriate safeguards are in place. But rest assured, working with our great universities, we're very keen to move this agenda forward as fast as we can.
Karen Adam, to be followed by Alexander Stewart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. We all agree that councils do have tough choices to make, but some of the cuts that we've seen, particularly by those in Aberdeenshire by the Tory-led administration, have hit vulnerable people the hardest. For example, elderly people in assisted living complexes threatened with eviction. Can I ask the Scottish Government, therefore, how will this reform strategy make sure that councils put people first and they stop balancing the books on the backs of those that need the help the most?
Minister.
The member makes a hugely important point. If you get the preventative agenda right, you are identifying where those services should be provided, so that investment allows you to save significantly more later elsewhere in the system. And when I talk about budget processes, I know it might sound a bit dry for some people, but it's really important we get that right, so that the money moves to the right place where it does have the preventative impact. That's not an easy challenge in any organisation, far less across a public sector with around 500,000 people working in it, but it's really important that leaders understand that. They're operating in a collaborative way to make that happen, and we've got the processes that sit behind that to allow them to do that.
Thank you. That's us at 20 minutes. There's 4 colleagues who still want to ask a question. We've got a bit of time in hand this afternoon, so I will allow those questions to be taken. It would be great if we could have a little bit more brevity in the responses as well as the questions. I call Alexander Stewart to be followed by Alistair Allen.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. In the statement, you indicate that the Scottish Government is ready to go further and faster. But how can that be achieved when you already know that workforce planning requires a massive reshape to enable services to be reformed? This could only be achieved by reducing headcount. So when will we see the proposals that are to be set out in the Government's Fiscal Sustainability Delivery Plan?
Always through the Chair, Mr Stewart. Minister.
You will see it when you see the Fiscal Sustainability Delivery Plan that you mentioned in your question, which will be next week.
Through the Chair, Minister.
Apologies, Presiding Officer. The member will see that next week when my colleague Cabinet Secretary presents that to Parliament. But the member makes a valid point that there will be changes in workforce, and I think myself and the Cabinet Secretary for Finance have made no secret of the fact that workforce will be reshaped through necessity because of technology changes, because of the need to get the right people in the right places in the right number, something we're very clear about in the strategy in my statement, and indeed with our conversations with trade union colleagues. And I think it's really important that they are part of this process, working with us to make sure that we ensure that the workforce, our most valuable asset, are empowered to deliver the change that's required.
Alistair Allen to be followed by John Mason.
As the Minister is aware, change on this scale must bring everyone with it, including island communities. Can the Minister provide an update on the Scottish Government's engagement with stakeholders, including those covered by the provisions of the Islands Act, as the strategy is developed to ensure islands remain at the heart of nationwide transformation of services?
Minister. Yeah, and one of the great advantages of island communities is that they are self-contained communities where there is, because of the scale, the scope to move reform faster than can sometimes happen in other parts of the country. The work we're taking forward on the single authority model with the island authorities and with Argyll and Bute is very important in that regard. That's one of the reforms that we see great hope in, because what that allows us to do is at that local authority level to be able to bring health, local government services and indeed other services provided in the community closer together structurally, remove duplication, make it easier to find resource to be able to provide those services and make them more joined up at a community level. So I think islands have a real important role to play in this.
John Mason to be followed by Stephen Kerr.
Thank you. Workstream 7 is headed simplification, which I very much agree with. So can the Minister absolutely rule out the idea of introducing mayors, which is the last thing Scotland needs, would be a waste of money and would take money away from frontline services?
Minister.
The member's got a very first clap of the afternoon. The member's got a very important point there. This is about having less of that those processes and not adding other layers of complexity. I think the regional model we've got, where local authorities come together either in city region deals or regional economic partnerships, and the work we're doing in the health service for health boards to collaborate more closely across different parts of the country, is the mechanism for that. Allows us to move faster, allows us to use the experience and the skills that are there without everyone going through the pain of a big reorganisation. And that, as I say, to add another layer into that complexity, I think is something that would take us in the wrong direction.
Stephen Kerr.
Well, I hate to disappoint the Minister, but I don't think he's been boring at all, because as one of the very few, if not the only SNP member that's ever ran an organisation, indeed a business, he would realise, I think, that the scale of the ambition of these... The scale of the ambition, you can correct me later, the scale of the ambition of saving £200 million a year on a current resource spending budget of £50.5 billion is not very ambitious. And he talks about culture change. He references it in one of the paragraphs in his speech. He knows, I think, that you need to have wholesale culture transformation in order to achieve the sort of step change that I think he really wants to make. How will he do that? And secondly, will he publish baseline metrics to go with all of the aspired savings in different areas of the operation of government?
Minister. Yeah, and on the savings point, yeah, I've been very clear on this. This is part of the work that's been taken forward for fiscal sustainability, and my colleague Cabinet Secretary will outline the other parts of that next week, which look at some of the work we're taking forward in other parts of the public sector. But this is very focused on that £5 billion, almost £5 billion that we identified in exercise last year. So in that regard, I think it's a fairly significant 20% over that time period, I think, is a realistic target to take forward. And absolutely, yes, of course, we will provide full information as we continue to take that work forward. But his point on culture is absolutely right. You don't just change culture by talking about it. That's an important part of it, but you need to get the structure right. You need to get the leaders in that organisation, of which there are obviously many, working together and understanding and feeling empowered, feeling that government's got their back, so they can take risks, they can try out new things. And it won't always work, but we need to work together as colleagues to learn from that and take it forward. Without that appetite for that ambition for innovation, then we aren't going to make the progress. So I think that is the key to unlocking all of this.
Thank you. That concludes this item of business. There will be a brief pause before we move to the next item of business to allow front benches to change.
Right.